Welcome back. I am here in this lecture I'm going to talk about some of the aspects of metatheatricality that many of you observed and had questions about. Um, the fourth wall that a few of you referred to, and it's a phrase that I must confess I'm not a fan of, because it is a concept that is falsely attached to modernity and post-modernity very specifically, right? This collapsing of the distinction between audience and actor, or stage and the audience. It when we talk about other plays, I'm sure this will come up again and again, and perhaps I would be better suited to doing a show and tell when we're in class. But very quickly, I'll draw your attention to things, literary features such as the chorus in classical poetry, right? I mean, if you think about Homer in Western poetry, we have the presence of a chorus that kind of elaborates on, comments on, offers us segues in and out of plot. Passages are elicited for us, narrative is clarified for us. So multiple genres across centuries and cultures have the feature, it's almost like a caveat to the conventions of the genre that are commonly expected, right? And the caveat itself, ironically, becomes a convention. So the chorus, the prologue, the epilogue, these are features that are included in plays of Shakespeare specifically, that allow for the breakdown of distinctions between stage world and the world of the audience, right? And that allow for narratorial interventions to be made. We talked about this also in class, that the theatre was a space that was vibrant in a sense that today it isn't, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that the theatre had a thoroughfare in it and around it, that it was a place of commerce just as much as it was a place of entertainment, and entertainment being commerce, of course. But I mean, we talked about the vendors, but also the sex workers, right? This was in the plays were held in theatres that were not located in London's reputable neighborhoods, right? It was the suburbs. It was in places on the other side of the Thames, right? People had to travel away from the sanitized civility of what was considered decent society in order to participate in the world of entertainment offered in the theatre, right? And the world of entertainment included things that were not on stage, things that were taking place off stage around the theatre. So the walls were not really present for them to be shattered or broken or violated, right? And in some ways, I might even suggest that the audience of the early modern period of the Renaissance was more capable of recognizing the multiplicity of the theatre's vibrancy than we are today, right? And perhaps that is because theatre has been fetishized into this into this product that we can passively consume in modernity and in the current period, whereas responsiveness was part of the audience's responsibility, and that entailed throwing trash and rotten vegetables and fruits at characters, nagging the clown, if you will, the clown nagging the audience, if you will. All of this was part of the vibrancy of the theatre, and it was very conventional, right? So it was not seen as it was not seen as problematic or transgressive in any way as it might be today. So I wanted to get that out there so you think about the stage and its divisions differently to what we might think of right now. And I talked about the Globe having a thrust stage. This is not the Globe, but even the architecture of the stage enforced intimacy between the actor and the audience, right? So that is important for you to retain, right? And I understand it is difficult as you think about this from the 21st century, where film is the dominant mode of dramatic communication or entertainment. But I would urge you to remember how this was a different period in which audiences' expectations were different and audiences' participation capabilities were also different. With that in mind, let us think about what is Metatheatricality doing to this play and with this play. The play is being written and unwritten on stage, right? It's uncannily modern and postmodern in that regard. The story being told and untold and retold is a familiar one, so everybody in the audience, specifically this audience, the elite audience, is familiar with it. They know what the story is supposed to sound like. So when the actors, the poor people, right, the rude mechanicals, but the only ones that have connections with labor, right? They are Bottom the weaver, right? The bellows mender. These are names of people, and they're conjoined with their labor, right? These are not titles like the Duke, or the King of the Fairies, or the Puck, or APOC. These are people who are rooted in their labor and the production of goods that define who they are, right? So when they start telling the story, it's a story that they are not familiar with in the same sense that the entitled characters are, but they are the storytellers. For the length of the play that they are putting out, they are the authors, right? And they are the ones who control the dynamics of the narrative. Is Shakespeare being condescending towards the actors? I actually don't care, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, if he is or isn't. But I think in the moment where he enables the story to be told and changed, right? Again, Helena's words, "the story shall be changed," come to mind, but by whom? The story shall be changed by Bottom. The story shall be changed by Peter Quince. The story shall be written and rewritten by those that are barely literate. And that I'm hearkening back to a lecture I had given early in the semester about the material realities of Elizabethan theatre, right? So the power to change, the power to transform might come from supernatural intervention, say from Oberon. It might come from Theseus, who has the ability to break down the Amazonians and force marriage upon the queen of the Amazons. It might come from Aegeus, who has the ability to demand that the law be observed and that his daughter potentially be killed as punishment for her disobedience to him. But the story, the fantasy, the pleasure of narration is commandeered by these rude mechanicals. And for the duration of the play, and the play within the play, the actor, the writer, the laborer, right, the one who is not entitled, but is defined by the work that he does, that person gets to be the author, right? Gets to be the playwright, gets to be the one capable of keeping you in your seats. Whether or not you're excited to be there is another matter. So I think the metatheatricality is again a transgressive moment where we're told, albeit very obliquely, that you want a different story, don't you? You want a different story than the one Oberon and Theseus and Aegeus have given us, right? You want a different story. Bottom's working on it. It's going to be Bottom's dream, you guys. And so there is this great secret revolution, if you will, that is going to be produced on the stage or by those that are capable of inhabiting the stage. So the fourth wall doesn't exist. Those that have shattered it, if you will, no, let's not go there. Those that have the capacity to mingle the human and the fairy, those that have the capacity to change the story, are those that are the least likely candidates, right? They're not going to be the kings or the autocrats or the fathers or the empowered. It's going to be the subaltern that will change the story, and that will be a story that is filled with paradox and contradiction. So it's a tragedy that is funny. There will be a song that has no place in it. I think that is what metatheatricality of the play does to and with the play, right? I know I'm like being really in your face with this, but I wanted to bring this up as the penultimate lecture, because the last one we will reserve for the Indian boy and for Orientalism, and to thinking about the ways in which the play can be read against its own grain, right? To make visible, for example, that which has been rendered invisible is one way in which we can read the Indian boy against the grain of the play. That renders him technically a non-presence, right? So we'll do that as the last lecture on Midsummer Night's Dream. I hope you're enjoying these, and I'll be back in just a few minutes to load up the last video and lecture. Bye.